Thank you for listening to Breakthrough Consciousness.
The podcast where we get out of the loop and into it all.
My name is Sean.
And I'm Clayton.
And as your co-host, we're going to be facilitating hearty conversation centered around personal growth.
Whether that be through us sharing our own stories and experiences, or holding space for our guests to share theirs, we're going to tie it all together with lively conversation and hope that you all enjoy.
All right, welcome back. This is part 2 of our 4-part series on emotional awareness.
As we talked about in our prior episode, we are going to be bringing forth this little method that Sean and I curated while sitting together meditating one day on how, some of the steps that we notice that we go through when we're trying to work through our own emotions, and wanted to put it down on pen and paper and have a more concise kind of resource for everybody to reference at any time, and for ourselves as well, because I know when I listen back, I remind myself of remind myself of a lot of the good things that we share here, and it's an important resource for me as well, for sure.
Yeah, so we talk about action steps at the end of just about every episode. This whole episode is going to be action steps. So this is you and me taking the rubber to the road,
Indeed.
So with that said, let's go ahead and kick it off. So like you said, it's a 4-part method. You want to go ahead and explain the first part?
For sure. The first step towards even working through an emotion and moving beyond past it is recognizing that we feel that way. Recognizing that there is some sort of disturbance in our force, if you will, whether that's making us upset, sad, or angry, or just feeling angsty or, not really comfortable in our own bodies in the moment.
This one can pretty well be summed up as recognizing your triggers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because triggers, quote unquote, is a trigger for some people. Some people think that's a dumb word and, all this thing, but it's just a good way of putting it. Things that set you off. So we're talking about negative emotions here.
Exactly. Like Sean mentioned in the prior episode, even someone talking in like a condescending, almost negative sounding tone, even if they're saying something positive, like that right there can be a trigger for someone if they've been yelled at as a child or any time in their life.
If they have an association with that tone, that's one of a negative one. One of someone who is condescending them or putting them down or trying to oppress them in some way or another.
Which is a whole different ballpark of things to work through.
Yeah, but that's, we're dealing with the emotions around that type of energy of feeling oppressed in our own lives. Sometimes we oppress ourselves through our patterns of behavior and our
ideas on how we should react or be about a situation.
I wasn't even thinking ideas, but yeah, you're right. I was thinking more just behaviors that were just, everybody knows that one habit they have that they don't understand why they do it, but they just have a compulsion to do this pattern, to enact this pattern. That's what I'm talking about. Like, I feel like everybody has that conditioned reaction to life when things get stressful. And what we're talking about is really responding in a responsible, self-caring way that's devoted to being a healthy person.
Yeah, not necessarily taking action immediately.
Literally just developing a mindfulness for being aware of when we are triggered. So that's step 1. If you can do nothing else in this method, at least practice the awareness. You might not even be able to have the emotional strength to carry out the rest of the method, but if you can do that one thing, then that becomes a practice, and then you can strengthen that habit to become aware of your triggers. And then step 2 would be
allowing and accepting.
Yeah, so it's kind of a 2-parter here, and that you can give your take on this, but the way I was understanding this was that allowance is sort of like a mental allowance. I'm going to allow the feeling and the experience to pass through me, and the acceptance is more of an emotional acceptance.
I had never really broken it down like that before, but it does resonate nicely. Like,
are they essentially one and the same for you?
Yeah, to me it is like a process of one and the same. Through allowing an emotion or an energy, a thought, or a feeling to occur, I'm not resisting it anymore. So, and I feel like resistance is the number one fuel towards negative emotion. And
100%.
just simply that.
That's what stress is.
Yeah,
is resistance.
exactly. We're resisting it so much that our body's tensing up, and
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of what we're avoiding here. So through allowing it, whether it's a negative thought or emotion, energy, a pattern going through, it just is able to pass through a little more fluidly. And the acceptance kind of stems off of that allowance. It more so, it's like, I've allowed this to pass and I've accepted it for what it is. I'm not just letting this thing that might make me uncomfortable run around here. I'm fully accepting of what it is and where it's at, and am willing to potentially work a little further now into that emotion.
100%. I just got a visualization of this. So what this step is, imagine that these emotions, as we talked in part 1, these are guides from, if you will, our higher knowing, higher self, soul, if you want to picture it in that way, or if you want to orient yourself in that way. So step 1 is our emotional awareness, our higher self, knocking at the door. That's the trigger. It's saying, I'm trying to tell you something.
Hey, not feeling so good.
Yeah, right, exactly. Knocking on the conscious mind. Hey, there's something going on here you need to process. So step 2 is opening the door, allowing it to come in, and accepting the news.
And accepting that it's here, exactly. Whether we're in the process of allowing it to come in or accepting that it's here, it's still at the root of it is not resisting the experience at hand. Because resistance is going to cause us to jerk and take unnecessary actions.
Right, not ignoring the knock on the door, running upstairs and putting on loud music, pretending like no one's here.
Yeah. The outside world scares me.
La 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 la. Can't hear you. So that's step 2.
That's what we're not doing.
That's what we're not doing, to be clear. So step 3 is taking that further. I'll just keep using this metaphor of emotions coming to the door, higher self's at the door. We're opening it up, allowed them to come in. We're accepting the news that we need to process something. The next step is processing that.
Yeah, reflection.
So we're reflecting on, why did this happen? Why did I invite this into my home, this experience?
And why did this experience make me feel the way it did? Why were these emotional responses a thing? What do I hold on to that upsets me over such a situation? Maybe it's something as simple as you don't agree with what someone does with their own body, how they dress or whatever. Like, that's not right,
Just find some judgment.
Yeah, some judgment.
Through.
And just as an example for reflection there, it's reflecting like, so why does what that person does bother me? What is it inside of myself that is triggered by that? Is it, do I want to dress like that and I don't let myself? Who knows?
Have I been told that type of person is a bad person in any colorful ways that we tend to judge people, whatever the scenario may be?
Maybe I feel like a bad person and I'm just projecting that on another person or something, as an example. It's just a human quality. A lot of us get caught up in that.
And that's just one example. That's just one example. I feel that when we start to dig into the reflection step, that step and the prior step can kind of become a feedback loop for a little bit. Because as we start to dig into, okay, now we're getting curious about our lives. We're not just in that defensive mechanism of trying to stay in our safe shell, in our comfort zone. We're actually allowing the emotions to speak through us, and we're listening. Sometimes what it has to say might also trigger us again. We might have more feelings about things about ourselves that we haven't wanted to look in the face.
Truly, and as we're digging deeper into that, just like you're saying, it's gonna get muddier, it's gonna get stickier,
there's gonna be
more
to allow,
dirtier,
more to accept.
There's a whole lot more to dig up. Typically, I'm not saying
you have to do this that deeply every single time.
No, but as we work on ourselves emotionally and start to shed older layers that are much more easily triggered, we'll get to deeper layers that the triggers might even be more painful to work with, deeper emotional things that we've held on to. And allowing and accepting has brought me to this place. If I can reflect on what it is that I'm accepting and why it's here, and oh sweet, I worked on that and I realized that I do this because of that. Okay, well now we have all of that to reflect on as well.
Exactly.
Keep it as general as possible here.
Yeah. So once we've done that reflection to a satisfying degree, again, as far as you want to go with this in a given process, because this might be on the fly. We don't necessarily always have the opportunity and luxury of, okay, something, I've been triggered, let me go to my sacred space and really sit here and process this,
might not
fully
have
with your full attention.
Sage in your hand.
Yeah, it might not be a whole new moon ritual or full moon ritual or something.
Right, but this is really something that we can take to the road and do in any moment if we have the trigger to do so.
For sure. So we've reflected. We've extracted a message. That's what the reflection is. And the next step is action. How are we going to integrate that lesson into our behavior? And that's how we really, truly start to train and rewire our subconscious mind, which is where the emotions really reside.
So we find that this tension we're holding on to because of the way we were treated as a child, perhaps, getting yelled at, essentially, as an example, has made it so that when someone raises their voice, even if they're talking out of excitement or passion, that causes us to become triggered and maybe shut down from the conversation, not being able to receive any of the information that's shared there. So through allowing and accepting there and reflecting and realizing that, oh, well, this triggers me because it reminds me of this situation that I was in that made me have to shut down emotionally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And now putting into action, we can maybe just consciously breathe and allow and accept and realize that not every person who might be speaking from that level is attacking or defending or trying to, maybe do whatever had happened to us in the past, just being a little more open to the experience through just conscious breathing, allowing and accepting.
Mm-hmm. That's a great pointer. The action step can be as simple as that. It can be as simple as making the commitment to do this method again. Next time something comes up, I'm going to go through this again in my head. That could be the first thing, that we could commit to doing as an action, is just the willingness to do this work, to do it again.
Process our own emotions, not necessarily leave with, this is the action that's going to make all of the things better. But
exactly, like it's a one-time thing or something, but making it a practice.
Exactly, the willingness to continue to do that emotional work until maybe we are in a place where there's something physical we can do, realizing that our bodies hold this stress, so I might want to go do some yoga and release those tensions and stress and work through those emotions bodily, subconsciously.
Heck yeah.
And we kind of broke this down to a nice little acronym, which I think is a lot of fun. We got the rah here. So we got recognize, step 1. What are the triggers? Allowing and accepting is step 2. Then we got rah so far. Moving on to reflection. What's the message that I can receive from this? And maybe a sign pointing where to go.
Extract some wisdom from the situation.
I like that word you used here. Extraction of information from the situation. And so now we got RAR. And moving on to action, into actualization, and bringing this whole process not just emotionally, mentally, spiritually, but moving
physically
forward
and experientially,
implementing better cycles, essentially, programming ourselves instead of being continually programmed by our past experiences or whatever cycles we're used to going through.
Right.
So rah, like everybody rah with us.
Yes, indeed. Next time you're triggered, rah.
Recognize, allow, reflect, and action.
I guess.
In the middle of it all, we're going to have some acceptance there too.
That's the part I wanted to come back to. The acceptance and the allowance. I feel like a key to that, because not everyone can just do that, by the way. A key to being able to do that is gratitude. So emotion comes up to your door, gives you that knock, gives you that trigger. What are you going to do? Are you going to stay safe like you want to, run upstairs, get distracted? or, burn the house down or whatever the energy may be. Sometimes our triggers lead us to doing more than just distracting ourselves.
Yeah.
So, no, but with gratitude of, I'm grateful you're here. I'm thankful for this experience.
This might not be how I always want to feel, but I'm grateful that I'm able to feel, able to process. Able to read these guiding posts, these signs of wisdom, and extract that information from it. Through gratitude, we can be grateful that, things aren't the best right now, but things are exactly how they should be so that I can learn how to work through these processes and who I am emotionally.
100%. 100%.
Rah, rah.
Sorry, I had another thought, but yeah, we just both we just arrived to the moment.
Just two melty boys here.
So lots of that for sure. So I want to give you guys some hypotheticals, because we're doing a full episode for this method, so we might as well kind of digest it a little bit more. Clayton, you had one that you wanted to share. You want to go ahead and give us that one?
Sure.
Go on, give it to me, Billy.
Yeah, so something, I thought of it because it's something that I experience and go through. And,
it's relatable.
Yeah, I talked about how, I deal with anger a good bit. Not a whole lot. It's not like it doesn't run my life or anything. But
yeah,
I
you don't need
experience it.
anger management classes or anything, but
no,
it's one of the soul classes you're taking here on Earth, you might say.
Truly, learning how to not react so quickly, and this emotional exercise and experience is strengthening that for me for sure. So, road rage.
Mm-hmm.
Going down the highway, maybe I'm going 69 and a 65. Nice.
Maybe in a 35.
Not anymore. I can't afford my insurance just about as it is.
Word.
So, I'm going 69 and a 65. That's A-okay. Probably not going to get pulled over. Might be in the left lane passing somebody in the middle, but someone in the middle got stuck behind that truck, and that 7-foot space between me and another car, which already is probably too close, but they want to slide right in there. So I got to hit my brakes and slow down, and my knee-jerk reaction might be to honk or, tell them they're number one. And it's just,
because they had no regard for anyone else on the road. They're the only one out there. Making me break.
Making me break? What the heck? But, it's like the fact that, that might have been a dangerous situation. Or maybe I'm just a little I am the king of the road now. Like, dealing with that and, got to step out of my ego for a second there and welcome other people in. So, instead of, immediately, hitting on the horn or what the heck ever, recognize I'm triggered. I'm getting heated here. I feel the levels rising.
They might not be in the right. However,
I can make sure that I'm not going to be in the wrong. And through, first of all, just recognizing, okay, this doesn't feel good. Allowing it, okay, this doesn't feel good, but okay, I'm not going to fight it, because if I fight it, then I'm going to try and make it right, make my point seem right, and argue against them in whatever way I can behind our 2-ton motorized vehicles that we're now,
our spaceships out there.
Yeah, those, first of all, offer a lot of protection from the humanity of those driving around you.
Exactly.
I feel like. Such isolated little peoples.
We're in our own little world. We got our music playing, our podcast going,
So, I've accepted that I am triggered here, and maybe in this moment I'm able to, why the heck does that trigger me at all? Why did him pulling over in front of me upset me, and maybe I had to slow down a little bit. But
so this would be the reflection aspect?
Exactly.
Okay.
So I've rawed, and now I'm into my second raw. I'm reflecting here.
Mm-hmm.
And, okay, that upset me because I was in a flow. I was going smooth and fine, and someone cut me off, and that triggered me. Having my flow inhibited disrupted, and that's something that is unsettling to most people.
Mm-hmm.
And, it takes me back to being a child when I might be having a good time singing or something. And, it might be midnight and my parents are trying to sleep. Shut up!
Mm-hmm. That type of thing.
Yeah, and it's okay. But, they're totally in the right. Shouldn't be singing at midnight. Probably should have been in bed.
Or here's something I've gone through. I'm a musician, practicing in shared living spaces, whether it be a house or an apartment. well, I'm sorry, guys, but I have to be loud to practice.
You need to
I guess
hear
I
it.
don't have to be,
Well, you
but
wanna hear it
Yeah,
and
you
feel
You want
it
to play it the way you perform.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to practice the way you perform. So that's dude. When I was living in Clifton, my neighbor came over and told me to shut up, and I was like, she didn't tell me to shut up, but she
It
was
felt like that.
But basically, I was in a flow, and she came over and she said, "Hey, your flow is like not letting me flow," type of thing.
Mhm.
And yeah, that can be like a trigger for just, oh well, let me get into my shell, and like now I have an excuse not to practice. I have an excuse to get down on myself.
An excuse to block ourselves emotionally.
Yeah.
Exactly what I'm getting at. So like through reflecting, I can realize that, oh, this triggers me because I feel like my flow's being inhibited. But really reflecting on it even more and, accepting that I feel inhibited now, going back through stage 2, allowing and accepting those feelings of like inhibition there. And,
right.
Reflecting even deeper and seeing, okay, well, do I need to feel inhibited because I'm still flowing? So what can I do about it other than take my action breath right there? And, acceptance permeates through all of it. And really just accept the situation for what it is. And if I get triggered in the same situation again, it might even be a smoother rolling through,
Right, because you've sort of paved that path in your circuitry in your brain,
truly. It's like it's already there. We want to be smooth and loving and cordial and connected with the greater all. I feel like it's innate in human behavior,
and we've been to that place before.
Yeah,
but getting there from a negative emotion and actually having some wisdom to bring into the future, getting
the gears moving. And this is just WD-40 to the human machine. We want it to be smooth.
Yeah.
I don't mean human machine is some big scary component.
But is that not what we are? Are we not, meat bags?
We are meat bags.
Just trying to like
navigate
our minds and our consciousness in ways that feel satisfying.
I think we're trying too much though in society.
Some sense, yeah. But let's not go down too much of that tangent. But we'll save that for bonus episode part 5.
Wow.
So yeah, man, beautiful. That's pretty much the hypothetical, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Is there anything else you want to say about that?
Not really.
Okay.
Want to give us yours? I know you were diving a little deeper emotionally, less out of like one on the fly situation, but more into a more deeply permeating emotional.
I thought it'd be good to give kind of 2 flavors of it, because like you said, yours is kind of like in the moment, and I mean, of course, they're both in the moment, but you're driving, like that's an immediate action. You can't stop driving and process your feelings real quick. You know what I mean? Like that's on the fly, like learning how to take that in a warrior fashion. To be able to, you're in the battle. You know what I mean? This fear triggers and whatever it may be is coming up in the battlefield or in the marketplace or whatever you want to say.
You're already in action and something happens.
Right.
Like, the reason I wanted to give my example is so that I could really just say we can do this on the fly and in the moment. It's not something that we need to go home and sit down and reflect on. But that is a super potent medicine in itself as well. And Sean's going to share an example on that.
Okay. So I wanted to talk about ways that I wanted to talk about situations where we are relying on certain activities, whether it be substances, distracting activities, TV or video games or reading, or hanging out with friends. Sometimes that's a distraction, whatever that may be. These coping mechanisms. What do you think about that, Bella? Oh, we let her in this time.
Guest host.
Yeah. So, say you went to work, and I'll just piggyback off the example from part 1. So you're at work, conflict happens with your boss. So you've been triggered. That might manifest as you just turn into being in a bad mood. Maybe you're distracted at work, you can't really focus, you don't feel productive, you're just on edge, agitated, you go home. Maybe you're irritable with your family or roommates or what have you. And then at some point in the day, you're going to do something to soothe yourself. So maybe immediately after you and your boss's conflict, you go back to your desk and pop a couple M&Ms or something. You know, something
sweet endorphins.
Yes, indeed, sweet dopamine.
Yeah,
really. I don't know the brain chemistry of it, but I know the feeling of it.
Yeah,
because I've definitely been there. So let's just use that as the example.
So, but you're basically going through like a scenario where this is not necessarily the most positive feedback loop. It's kind of like what you do if you allow those emotions to go more so like unchecked and rampant. You just continue in that like state, and now you're just trying to suppress.
Sure. Yes. You can catch it at any stage, right? You could catch it during the craving stage. Oh, I want this substance, this activity, this whatever it may be. I want that. Let me recognize that I am trying to distract myself. Because that's ultimately what any substance abuse is us trying to distract ourselves from the moment because of how ugly the moment feels, even if it doesn't look that ugly. So, or it could be you've already started going down the avalanche of whatever your here it's M&Ms, you know. So maybe it starts with a couple, and maybe some person can just put away the bag after that. They're like, all right, I gave myself a little hit of dopamine, I'm fine, I can bounce back. Some people, they might rip the whole thing open.
They're all over the floor, like
eat them off the floor, you know, and then go.
I saw one roll under here.
And then 5 minutes later, you know, go see what the company donuts are looking like today, you know. So anyway, you can catch yourself at any point in that scenario. So say you had the craving, you're popping the M&Ms, you're like, all right, here I am again. This experience has knocked at the door of my consciousness again. I usually ignore it and just keep doing the thing that I do to make myself feel better temporarily with that instant gratification. But, you know, I'm trying out this new method, so I've recognized it. I'm going to go ahead and allow it to happen, not punish myself, accept that here I am again. I've attracted this experience into my life for a reason, being grateful, curious, you know, just flipping that coin. Whereas usually I'm frustrated, agitated, short-sighted, all the other ones, just wanting escape from those feelings. That's my
identifying more with the negative emotions instead of like observing them happening to work through, essentially.
Allowing them to influence me, influence my behavior and my outlook, my demeanor. Because, you know, you can have great connections with people and good conversations and have this self-awareness. But when you get back into that negative emotional state, your body is the body it always is in that state. But we do have the choice to start practicing a different pattern during that same energetic emotional experience.
Truly. And it, you know, we shouldn't beat ourselves up because we're not feeling good, you know. And we shouldn't want to suppress it or hide it, even though it's human to do so, for sure. And let ourselves feel, first off, is, you know, step 2.
That's step 2, brother. Yeah, exactly. That allowance and that acceptance, you know, like I said, you might start practicing this and only be able to really do step 1. And if you can do that, that's awesome, because the more you train yourself to practice that habit, the better off. Because then you'll strengthen that muscle and you'll get to step 2. And once you really dig into dealing with those bosses within that level, you know, we might not be able to breeze through this game, this method, from start to finish every time. Sometimes the waves of emotions are going to carry us, and we are going to go into autopilot, as I like to call it.
And it's like you mentioned, gratitude. It's just important to be grateful for what we're able to experience now.
Those are one of the tools. That's one of the swords against the bosses of self-loathing and whatever its ugly cousins we're dealing with here.
Exactly. And
fear. essentially.
Before we go too far, like recognition, just recognizing that in itself is practicing mindfulness and expanding our awareness of our own processes.
It's kind of a shield, that's like, oh wait, I do have this shield. I can resist resistance by allowing it.
Yeah, I can be aware with my shield, and I can cut through the ignorance with my gratitude.
And curiosity is the other side. Curiosity can be the bow. You can get curiosity from afar, You might not want to go get to know it intimately, but you might, scratch the surface. Why is this happening?
Use your cunning.
Why am I attracting this into my life?
Truly.
I might not have the time and energy to really delve into that, cutting the flesh of that, self-limiting belief. But yeah, anyway, so going off our metaphor here.
Warriors.
Getting graphic up here.
I like it.
So anyway, so I just wanted to point that out. Okay, so in this example, we've recognized that we're in a pattern of a coping mechanism, trying to soothe ourselves. Allow it to happen. If that means finishing the slice of cake, that means finishing the cake itself. Go ahead and write it out. Write out that experience, write out that emotion, and accept that maybe you needed this today, whatever it may be. Maybe you needed that to kind of coddle your ego for a second. Sometimes we need to do that. But when we have worked that muscle enough to strengthen our emotional stamina, then we won't need to do that in the future. Maybe we're at that point right now where we don't need to, eat this whole bag of M&Ms or whatever. So that's a whole processing. Like I said, steps 2 and 3 can be a feedback, push and pull. You can go from 2 to 3, 2 to 3. And sometimes that's where we end. Sometimes we can use one of them to break that loop into a spiral and turn it into action. Actually choose to act differently right now and in the future.
But until we reach the action, it's okay to keep reflecting and gathering more information on why we are the way we are, why we act the way we do, why we're triggered in the ways we are triggered. And until we have enough information to really look at and be like, this is a lot of who I am and why I respond the way I do, only then can we, take that ball of information and kick it, take a little action and juggle it around and figure out what the heck to do with it.
Yeah, so in this example, that reflection would look something like, why am I going to this activity or substance to soothe myself? Why have I grown into a body that is using that as a crutch, as an emotional crutch? That's going to be personal. Like, you got to be willing to ask that question first and foremost. And I mean, here I'm talking about like sugar addiction, essentially, which I've definitely identified with in the past and to the present to a degree. But I mean, think about it, man. Think about the way that, children are raised up in the States. It's part of our culture to, you have cake and ice cream at birthday parties. And, if alcohol is a struggle, like think about that. The way that our culture reveres alcohol for being a tool of celebration, right? Cheers, good time, like victory, or just celebration or whatever it may be. So we start to associate in our body, in our mind, in our emotions, these substances with a good time.
And
with
positive feelings and happiness or whatever. And
if you're in a slump, like, of course, yeah, what would be the natural thing? You're going to want to, turn on the party real quick.
Yeah, feel good, feel better, whether you eat a few M&Ms or whether that is going out socializing and stretching yourself further than you need to. Because I definitely, just hearing you say that example and feeling it in myself, realized that I partied a whole lot more when I was coping more with my emotions than when I was actually dealing with them and, willing to work through them and like strengthening that emotion muscle, like we've been calling it. You've been calling it like that. And
strengthening, your connection to the subconscious mind.
Truly. And a lot of times is the body to me in my mind.
Yeah. So recognizing it, allowing it to happen, starting to question ourselves. Why is this happening? Why am I conditioned the way I am? Can I forgive it? We haven't mentioned that yet, but forgiveness is a part of that reflection process too. That's one of your tools, one of your weapons in that on that level. Because to me, self-compassion and compassion in general is the recognition that I am the way I am because of the way I am, because of what I've been through, the way I've been raised, the experiences I have had. All of these things have accumulated into my ego, my personality. I am the way I am because I am the way I am. And when you totally recognize that we are all like these spiraling energies from that centered source, that unified consciousness, we're all these branches on the tree of the one consciousness. You realize, wow, we're actually all perfect in our imperfections. You realize that how you have come to be who you are and the trauma that you've gone through. You can actually start to smile at that. And you can see it in other people too. That, we kind of wear your experiences as a badge of honor. I am who I am. I don't have to let it keep me down. I don't have to still identify with those lower patterns of behavior and self-identity.
And agreed, 100%. And also on the flip side of that, it's not allowing that I am who I am as a means to excuse our less than kosher behaviors, or those parts of ourselves that could use some work.
That's one of the dead ends in the journey for sure. We're in that stage of reflection. We might, just, I am what I am. And then the action is to repeat the loop, so that's a dead end, right? That's an action that leads to us staying in that loop cycle.
Stagnancy.
Which, sometimes we have to do. I've done that. How many times have I had this conversation and still enacted those old patterns, So it takes practice.
It does. And like you're saying, even if we're still just in the state of recognition, like strengthening that is really an more open door to, well, as you're stating, strengthening your wrist to open the door to allowing and accepting, to become strong inside to open the door outside for sure.
Absolutely. And then finally, to wrap up my example here, this hypothetical of essentially substance abuse, using something to soothe and distract rather than facing our feelings. So we've reflected on it. We have that self-compassion, that forgiveness. Last step, how are we going to move forward? How are we going to use that lesson of what we've learned about ourselves? So in my scenario, struggling with, what we'll call sugar addiction, like part of my processing is, why am I that way? And kind of help to sort of realize what I mentioned earlier, just looking at how our culture kind of almost abuses these
substances.
Think about it. Sugar's in so much food. You don't think, you're having spaghetti for dinner, that you're eating something sweet. But there's tons of sugar in all sorts of processed foods.
100%.
So that angle, and also just like recognizing, okay, why do I need an emotional crutch at all? Why is that emotional backbone not stronger? That, whatever. So figuring out all that, just the awareness of it in and of itself can be enough to put the action into, okay, next time I'm going to forget myself. Next time I am at a point where I have a craving that's not really going to serve me and make me stronger, I'm just going to let it go. I'm going to forgive that and just let it go. Recognize it, label it. Oh, this is craving. That's what that feels like.
Training yourself, essentially.
Yeah. And then have a drink of water. Just reset yourself, Move on.
Feel that craving and realize how good water makes you feel.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
For instance. So, yeah. Well, I think we did a pretty fair job of setting up the method, describing what it would look like in action. So thank you all for sticking with us so far. This is part 2, 4 parts. So now that we've given our thoughts on what emotional awareness looks like, what emotional health feels like, got a method for fighting off these emotional demons,
allowing off,
allowing
them through.
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
And even fighting sometimes it is standing up for ourselves, not necessarily externally but internally. Can't beat ourselves down forever. Eventually we do have to stand up and stand strong and proud and be who we are.
Absolutely. Cool. So the next 2 parts are going to be guided meditations for taking this deeper into an experiential level. So right now we're approaching emotion with the intellect, which only goes so far if it leads us to action, to experiencing something different than what we've been on the trajectory of. So with the next guided meditation, it's going to be, or the first one rather, it's going to be a gentle easing into the waters. So just literally opening up to the emotional body, just kind of opening that door, opening the window.
Setting the space to be able to just be present with our current emotional situation, whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm. And that's about as far as it goes.
Mm-hmm. Playing around in those waters and experiencing it and just really being grateful and okay and accepting of that space.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The opening is key for that one. The next meditation visualization is going to be more of an advanced technique of really consciously deciding, okay, yes, we've opened the door, we've opened the window, but now we're going to invite the darkness in. We're going to invite the awareness of our negative patterns in. So we're going to visualize something that's really going to evoke fear, which isn't going to be for everybody. Not everybody's going to want to go and experience that meditation right away, if at all. Maybe they don't need to do that. Maybe there are other ways of doing that, and that's fine. But this is a tool for doing that, a little bit of a deeper dive.
Exactly. Opening ourselves up and expressing ourselves to the other parts of ourselves that we may have bottled up, pushed away, and, opening those corks, having a sip of the juices that we fermented, and really experiencing that, and at that point working through it.
Absolutely.
If we want.
Absolutely. And I've been using the metaphor of like being in a house, opening the doors and windows, but a better one is that the first meditation is going to be just easing into the pool, easing into the waters of emotion. Easing into the waters of emotion, just kind of like you said, playing around in that pool. The second one is going to literally be diving into the ocean of our awareness and of our ego, seeing what's down there.
Mm-hmm. So, we can go as deep as we want. We got life support here. We're all good as long as we keep on breathing.
We got the breath.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir. So we'll see you guys in those waters.
Rah, rah.
Till we get out of the loop and into it all.
Keep on breathing.